Hello. Hi, guys. How are y'all doing tonight? My name is Dino Ramos. I'm an associate editor at Deadline. I know what y'all are here for tonight. So welcome to SAG-AFTRA Foundation Conversation with actress Laverne Cox. You are in for a nice treat tonight. She is an actor, producer, transgender advocate, and she rose to prominence playing Sophia, as you have seen, in the Netflix series Orange is the New Black. And she's the first transgender person to be nominated for a Primetime Emmy Award. Yeah, right on. In addition to Orange is the New Black, she's been working. Has anyone seen her in the new episode of Dear White People? If you haven't, it's pretty good. She's been in The Mindy Project, Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce, Law & Order SVU. She's a transgender advocate, and she continues to lend her voice to the cause of transgender visibility and equality. She has taken her empowering message of moving beyond gender expectations to live more authentically all over the country. And in 2017, she became the first transgender person to play a transgender series regular on CBS's Doubt. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome Laverne Cox to the stage. Hello, Laverne. Look at that. We have the tea and we're about to spill it. Let's sit down. Laverne, how are you today?
Let me talk into the microphone. Hi, actors. You're all actors, yes, mostly. I love being with other actors.
Of course, you're with your
my people.
Yes. Oh, and I also forgot to mention that you are nominated for your 3rd Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Guest Actress in a Drama for Orange is the New Black. Yes. So let's get right into it, shall we?
Let's get right into it. Can I start? Can I say one thing? Yeah. When I was driving up, I've done a few of these at this point, and the last season of Orange is the New Black just dropped, and as I was driving up, I was like, oh my God, this could be the last time I do this. This could be the last time that I get to come and talk to my fellow actors as an Emmy nominee, and what an incredible blessing it is. It's something I've dreamed about, and I never thought I would end up here. And I'm just like, wow, this is the last time. Let's have a really good time tonight.
Yes.
Let's have a good time tonight.
It may be the last time for Orange is the New Black, but for something else, maybe.
You never know. Yeah. There's so many brilliant actors who never get nominated for things. And maybe it's not the show that the Academy is checking for, or there's so many amazing performances. I mean, you just saw this episode of Orange is the New Black, and there's so many incredible performances in this show. And I just rewatched it to prepare for you this evening. And to be singled out in this group of actors, they're just so incredible, and I'm just like, why me? Why not? I mean, like, I don't want to pick favorites, but I mean, you just saw. I'm like, why me? And so I just want to shout out all my castmates in Orange is the New Black. When you are an actor, it's reacting, and so you can't ever do a performance alone by yourself. So shout out to my people.
Yes. So 3rd Emmy nomination. So when you found out, like, where were you? What was your initial reaction? And when you saw your fellow nominees, what were you thinking?
Okay, so I was in London shooting a movie. I'm shooting an action comedy, my first action comedy called Jolt, starring Kate Beckinsale, which is a trip. And Bobby Cannavale plays my partner. I'm a police detective in the movie. Okay. And so I was on set, and I was on a break, and I had actually been emailing with my publicist and manager earlier in the day. There was a little potential fire, because I sometimes talk too much, and there was a little fire that, like, we kind of had to, like, monitor. And so I get a call from Jamie. I was like, oh shit, like, shit has hit the fan. You know, like, I was like, oh my gosh, she's calling me. The shit, oh my fuck. And she calls me and she's like, you got an Emmy nomination. I was like, and so I was sort of like, wait, what? And I think if I'm going to be really real with you tonight, because I've been up since 4 a.m. and I have no energy not to be. So the other times I was nominated, there were before the nominations came out, we would do like FYC panel like this. We would come out and talk to Emmy voters. There might be like an ad in Deadline or something for your consideration. Yeah. There was none of that this time. And Orange is like, I love our show, but then sometimes later seasons, like the Academy isn't checking for our show. And I didn't think the Academy was checking for our show. So I was like, okay. And I was honestly like, I literally said to my team, I was like, I think, okay, oh. I was like, I think like somebody from Pose is gonna be nominated, like one of the trans actors from Pose is gonna be nominated, and I won't be the only trans person nominated for an acting Emmy this year. And I was like, that was like my thing. I was like, this is gonna be exciting. We can get to celebrate, and maybe like we can work it in. Okay, this is like the real truth. I was like, maybe we can work it in. Like I can present the category, and maybe I could give like the Emmy to like somebody from Pose if they win. And so like this is like
you had a whole plan.
I had a whole plan to not be nominated. But want it really like to want to celebrate, because I really am a huge fan of Pose, and I am literally like, these are all my friends, and I'm rooting for all of them. And so I was like, this is, it's going to be their year. And none of the trans actors from Pose were nominated. Billy Porter was. Yes. Praise be to the force of nature that is Billy Porter. Work, Billy. Ew. Academy voters, vote for Billy Porter.
Yes.
I can't wait to see what Billy's gonna wear.
Me?
Anyway.
Oh yeah.
I digress. So it was really shocking that I got this nomination. And I don't know if anyone here voted. I thank you for everyone in the Academy who said the work was worthy. And I don't know. I just think a lot about what it means to be an actor, and how intense the work is. And sometimes like a lot of moments in Orange have called for some really intense raw shit, like the stuff I really love doing and the stuff I've trained to do. And when I think about the performances that I have loved over the years, that have inspired me, and I would love to get to the level where I could do that kind of work. And I don't know. It feels like maybe another nomination is like maybe someone thinks I'm close or getting there in some way, and that means a lot.
Yeah,
because I love just the craft of being an actor. The little thing I geek out over, like all the little stuff. We can get into it. Get into it all.
But we are currently in the 7th and final season, which it's dropped. Your character, as well as all these characters, have gone through many a journey. They've been through it. And the show really celebrates, the human spirit, how to cope with loss, strength, and, finding yourself along the way. And it's all just happens to be set in this prison. But what were some of your favorite surprises that you learned about Sophia through, the 6th season and even the 7th one, if anyone hasn't watched yet, spoilers, whatever. And and is there anything that you learned about yourself as an actor? That's a really heavy question.
I mean, I am not going to talk about season 7 because I'm going to assume people maybe haven't watched it, and I'm just programmed to not give spoilers.
Yeah, well, this is a safe space. Yeah.
We all just saw a little bit of season 6. I think one of the reasons I act, and one of the reasons I love acting, is that I love my acting mentor, Susan Batson, who I studied with for years. Does anyone know Susan Batson? She's a brilliant acting coach, and she's based in New York City, and she has a great book on acting called Truth that I highly recommend. But I studied with her for about 5 years consistently, and this was in the early 2000s, and I got to intern at her acting studio, and so I like mopped floors and answered the phones, and I did all the things I can get like acting classes for free. So I was cleaning toilets for acting classes. And she talks about the character tragic flaw. She talks about and one of the things that's distinct about Susan Batson and her process is she talks about the unfulfilled need. I was meeting with my acting coach last night, and we were talking about Meisner, who talks about the need, but Susan Batson talks about the unfulfilled need, and she feels like that develops in human beings around the age of 5 years old. And but we as human beings can't walk around in our need, right? We can't walk around, I need love, I need, my mother or whatever. And so we often act in opposition to what we really need as human beings. And that's really great information for the actor. And she calls the tension between the unfulfilled need and the public persona, the things that we sort of cover to be out in the world, that tension is often a tragic flaw. Tragic flaws are often addictions or character defects that we kind of, the way we operate in the world. And I love deeply flawed characters because I think that those flaws are the things that we can play as actors. That's the active stuff that we can play. And so what I love about Sophia is that there's something so beautifully flawed about her. I mean, even in this episode, there's like, but even with someone's flaws, it's like there's underneath it all, like Sophia wants to be able to do right by her family. I don't know what you think about her deciding to take the money. And I mean, wouldn't you take the money? You're in prison. I mean, it's girl.
Don't lie.
But there is the piece of like, there is one point, if you know Sophia's story from other seasons, where she wanted justice. She wanted to be able to tell her story and let folks know what horrible things have happened to her. And she's just been beaten down by the system so much that she just wants out, and the moment of when she says no one's listening, it's just, when I read that, I thought of it one way, and then when I was in the scene and Laura Prepon directed this episode, and I was with Nick, and something I just thought about being Black and trans in the world, and how for so long we've been saying, we're being murdered and we're being discriminated against. And there's so much injustice in the world right now. And there's so many things to sort of, resist and to be outraged about, that I feel like people aren't listening, when it comes to the struggles of a lot of trans folks right now. And I get it. There's just not enough bandwidth to really take care of a lot of these things and to, be woke around a lot of things. But it just was just layered for me. And so I think that so much of the journey for me with Sophia, I think, and this just came to me as I was talking, I think the piece is that every step along the way, the character of Sophia Brissett has been bigger than me. There's been something, when I booked this part, I had, I turned 40 in 2012, and I thought my acting career was over. I hadn't worked in almost a year. I hadn't booked anything, and I was in rent arrears. I was working in a restaurant, but I wasn't making very much money. Business was really slow, and I had set up a payment plan with my landlord so I wouldn't be evicted. I had gotten an eviction notice in February of 2012, and I was in debt, and I was just like, okay, I'm 40, and this acting thing clearly is not working out, and you're Black and trans. What are you thinking anyway? So you should go and do something else. I mean, this is real shit. And but I had and I was thinking maybe journalism, but I had been writing for the Huffington Post, and someone named Jack Garris, who worked at a PBS show called In the Life, had approached me to do a segment about violence against trans women, to produce a segment. And I submitted the proposal, and we were planning to go interview this Black transgender woman named Cece McDonald, who was in a men's prison in St. Cloud, Minnesota. And this was all before Orange is the New Black came out. So this is in 2012. So we were planning to do the episode. We got approval to interview Cece in prison, which was huge. And in October of that year, In the Life lost their funding. So we couldn't do the segment on Cece McDonald, but I booked Orange is the New Black. And I said to Jack, I think, because I'm on this show about a transgender character in prison, I think we'll be able to do this documentary on Cece. I said this to Jack, and sure enough, I think we'll be able to do something. And then sure enough, a year later, in May of 2013, hello. In May of 2013, I mentioned Cece McDonald at the GLAAD Awards. Jack approached me and said, I want to do a documentary about Cece. I said, yes. And in November of 2013, we were in prison interviewing Cece McDonald. And so every step along the way, this character has been an opportunity to talk about something bigger. And Orange is the New Black has been an opportunity to talk about something bigger. And the lesson for me, and there's so many lessons, but one of them was God's time, not my time. When I moved to New York City in 1993, I was a junior at Marymount Manhattan College, and I was a dance major there, and I thought I thought I was fabulous. You know, I was 21 years old, thought I was fabulous, and I thought I'd be famous, a superstar even, in 2 years, 3 years tops.
Because that's how long it takes. 2 years.
Yeah, this is what I thought. This is what I thought. You know, and this is what I thought, and it was the sort of age of the club kid, and like RuPaul had just done his thing, and Supermodel of the World, and I was like, okay, like there's a space for that. I was in a gender non-conforming space then, and so I was like, I'm gonna be a superstar in a few years.
Then what happened?
I wasn't a superstar in 2 years, 3 years tops. And I moved to New York in 1993, and the first season of Orange is the New Black came out in 2013. So 20 years later, 20 years later.
Times 10, 2 times 10. 20 years.
And then, you know, it's arguable whether I'm a superstar now. And this would be like 27 years later, 26 years later. And so God's time, not my time. And then the piece of things don't happen a minute before they're supposed to. And just the enormity of what Orange is the New Black became, and you know, magazine covers and Emmy nominations and all the things that happened as a result of that was really intense. And the responsibility that I felt being the first trans person, it was a lot. Yeah. It still is a lot. And I could barely contain the energy of that as a 40 plus something year old person. In my 20s, there's no way I could have been able to do that. And so there's that piece. And then there's the piece of, I believe, it was inevitable for trans people, you know, to become mainstream. I thought it was inevitable, but I think that maybe I got to be the first in so many ways is because I understood, like so many other people did, that it was, if I had an opportunity, that I needed to be of service. And so then it really is, and I was telling you earlier that I was watching this talk with Cornel West and Joe Rogan on the way here, and Cornel West was saying that it's not politicians who push against systems and like white supremacy and whatnot. First, it is the artist. First, it is artists who do that work, and we are the ones who push the culture forward and move things forward, and then the politicians maybe come, maybe not, come. So it's the responsibility of the artist is really a very, very big one, and I've been thinking a lot about that with this third Emmy nomination. I'm like, why would I get a third Emmy nomination? It has to be a bigger reason. It's not about me, because I may not win. You can vote for me if you want to. But I probably, you know, it's not likely that I'll win with this incredible category of women. So then what is it for? And I think it has to be for something bigger. And we can talk about some more of that stuff later, but I just feel like I've said a lot and you may want to ask a question.
I could just sit here and stare at you and you could talk for the next 40 minutes. It makes my job easier. But, you know, before Orange is the New Black, you appeared on several shows, several films. But after appearing on the show, Orange is the New Black was not only groundbreaking in like what it was, but also for streaming, because it was the first, if not mistaken, the first original program on Netflix.
House of Cards came before us, but House of Cards was also
the first. Yeah.
Well, House of Cards was actually a remake of a British show, yeah, so we were the first original.
There you go,
yeah.
Original. But as a trans woman of color, and you know, being on this show that is kind of was a cultural movement in a way, how has, you know, the show, has it changed your approach when you enter a room, when you enter like a space in the industry, in this industry that is, you know, still, you know, trying to figure out this diversity and inclusion thing? Has that changed your attitude about how you approach going out for roles, meeting with, you know, managers, meeting with agents? How has that changed?
No, it's such an interesting, tricky thing. I was at an event on Sunday, and I was just sort of thinking, like, it was my second year going to it, and I was like, I'm just, you know, I'm a black trans woman, and I'm just up in here, and it's
Do you
really
think there's
dope.
like an imposter syndrome thing going on sometimes?
Often. And almost all the time.
Oh.
And I think, but the way yeah, of course, I have, And I think, and to be honest, I think I've done bad work as an actor. I think there's some moments that are just like, oh, that was not quite in the truth, girl. And what I appreciate about myself as an artist, if I must say, is that I take risk. Is that I take risk and I make big choices, and it might not quite work, and hopefully I'll have a director who's like, let's try it this way. I remember I was doing an episode of Doubt, and we had a director who was French and English was his second language, so he just didn't pull any punches. Just like, you're pushing. And I'll just never forget this. And it was a scene with Judith Light, which was like one of the greatest days of my life, doing a scene with Judith Light.
Oh my.
It was the day after the Emmys, 2016. We were shooting Doubt, and I had a whole day. I was presenting at the Emmys, the only time I presented at the primetime Emmys. And then I was like trying to get out of there because I had to be up at like 3 in the morning to do scenes with Judith Light all day. And I was like, I can't not be on my game, And it's, I love trusting and putting my trust in my director, and whether you agree with the director or not, for me, it's like I have to trust them because I'm gonna go out on a limb with some choices, and I need them to, be my conductor sometimes. And then sometimes they'll let me go. Sometimes they'll be like, no, girl, let's pull it back. Yeah. And I need that because I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna go for it. That's what I do. So, did I answer your question?
Kind of. I mean, it's like, a lot of people from marginalized communities, I think imposter syndrome is something a lot of people in marginalized communities, whether it's in Hollywood or not, kind of suffer from.
But what I think, what I'll say to that is, yes, that exists constantly, but what if I'm able to have a moment, and it's a moment-to-moment thing, of rising above that or overcoming that, it's a service piece. It is a piece of, well, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I suck, but there's something bigger that I can be in service of. And that if I can connect to a power greater than myself, if you believe in God or the universe or whatever it is, if I can connect to that and allow that energy to speak through me, maybe I'm an imposter, but if I can draw from this other energy, then hopefully some sense of truth can be spoken through me in a moment. So again, yes, I can feel like an imposter, but if I can draw from the spirits, from the gods, from all these other things in a moment, maybe some level of truth can come through me. And I think oftentimes acting is channeling. I don't know if any of you ever feel that, a character is based on someone you knew or someone who passed away. Oftentimes, I've been very blessed to find a moment in the script that connects to someone who may not be here anymore, and I just invite that spirit to speak through me. And that sometimes I think is the work of being an actor, is to allow, especially because I think most of us feel like we're not enough and we suck, and we enter an industry that constantly tells us that, right? I don't care how many Emmy nominations you have, there's somebody out there saying that Laverne Cox sucks. And so then in that case, it's like, just move, surrender, and let something come through and speak through you.
Yeah, we were talking backstage about diversity and inclusion and how you go on talks with that. Particularly in Hollywood, since you started, how have you seen the D&I space? Because like Hollywood loves talking about diversity. Taking action is a different story, if I'm right. But yeah, it's, and we see things like, one of the recent headlines that's going around right now is the IMDb birth name removal. And a lot of people still don't understand why that's a big deal. They don't understand what dead naming is. And that they did a step in the right direction. But it's little things like that are moving the needle. But since you started in the industry, how has that progress been for you, and what have you seen that has changed for the good or bad?
Well, the way I see it is that I don't know if Hollywood has always liked talking about diversity and inclusion. I don't believe that's the case. There is this great YouTube channel called Be Kind Rewind. Does anyone know it? You know
someone
it?
does.
Be Kind and Rewind. It's good, right? There's a journalist who has this. Do you know the name of the journalist? I was looking for her name, and she does this voiceover for the site, and it's basically a site that looks at Best Actress Oscar races through the history of the Oscars, and she does a deep dive in terms of the social, political environment of what was happening in the culture at the time. She just did the latest one on Gone with the Wind, so she talks about the political climate with Gone with the Wind, the adaptation of the book, the search for Scarlett O'Hara, the politics of how she won and why she won. But there's a great one that I rewatched today, thinking about being the only transgender person nominated for an acting Emmy. She does one on Halle Berry's Best Actress Oscar race, and what was deep about her critical analysis of the moment is that, if you recall, it was 2002 when Halle Berry won her Best Actress Oscar. She's still the only Black woman to win a Best Actress Oscar. Sidney Poitier received a Lifetime Achievement Award that night. Whoopi Goldberg hosted, and Denzel Washington won the Best Actor Oscar for Training Day. Big night for black folks at the Oscars. Huge night. Which was amazing. I remember being at home just crying and just feeling like, oh my God, maybe I got a shot. Maybe I got a shot. But the point that the journalist makes on the site is that this was a moment, not a movement, and that Halle Berry was aware of the history of what that win meant for her, but no one else seemed to be aware of it or talking about it or interested in talking about it. And it was a moment that happened and passed because it wasn't part of a larger movement. And then she references Oscar So White, which became a movement, which became a call to change the structural reasons why Black folks were not getting nominated for Oscars. So there was a push to have more Black folks in the Academy or women in the Academy, and this becomes structural change. Can we go further with all these things? Yes. But I think the thing about IMDb and dead naming, and specifically trans folks, but then we can talk about what she beautifully talks about, the Hays codes, and historically, right, that it's so good. I just go watch Be Kind, Rewind. It's so good because can
we watch an episode now?
I know, it's so good. But the Hays codes, we know the Hays codes back in the day with Hollywood. So there were all these limitations of what you could show on screen, and interracial sex or dating was one of the things you could not show. Miscegenation, Lord. And so then if most of the roles for women, because we're talking about sexism intersecting with white supremacy, most of the roles that existed for women in classic Hollywood in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s were romantic leads. And if Black women were taken out of the possibility of being romantic leads because most of the men were white, and then they didn't want to do all Black, two Black people as leads, how they wouldn't do that in the 30s, 20s, 30s, or 40s. So then that limits the options for Black women to be able to win a leading actress Oscar. We know Hattie McDaniel is the first Black woman to win an Academy Award for Gone with the Wind, controversially on so many levels. Even with the controversy, you look at the performances, the stereotypes and all that, it was a brilliant performance. Gone with the Wind is deeply problematic as it is. I think, you may disagree, I think there's just some brilliant work. Vivian Leigh is divine. Yeah. Hattie McDaniel is divine in that movie. And I think critically, and see, I'm not about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I can look at Gone with the Wind critically, but then also appreciate the lovely things about it. So then if you look at the history of what was available for Black women historically, of course. And then certainly Dorothy Dandridge was the first woman nominated for lead actress. I mean, it's just, I'm telling you the whole
we don't need to watch it anymore.
I'm telling you the whole tea. But it's deep. And so the question of how do we make a situation so that Halle Berry is not the only one, so that I'm not the only one nominated, and is then what Halle said is that we have to, when we are making our work, we have to tell the truth more about, like, if you have something said in New York, you don't have Black people, we know those shows. It's like, there's a lot of them. What are you doing? Or are you really telling the truth? And certainly I lived in New York for many years, and I knew white folks who just managed to like no other white folks. I don't know how. That wasn't my life in New York.
Stick together.
And didn't know other gay folks. I dated a man for on and off for many years. He said, I don't know any gay people except my mother's hairstylist. So I'm like, you live in New York and you don't know any gay people? Like, how is this possible? So how do we begin to tell the truth, right? And then I think diverse writers' rooms, diverse people directing. Who's working behind the scenes is crucial. There's been that's been more of a push there, and so I think that is progress, that we're having conversations about who's writing, who's directing, who's below the line, above the line. That makes a difference. Who's doing makeup? My girlfriend Deja Smith, who happens to be one of my makeup artists, and she's working on Pose, and she's openly trans, and she's nominated for an Emmy too. I'm so happy for her.
Emmy nom.
So happy for her, but she's one of the few trans women, if not the only one. I'm not sure if she's the only one on the doing makeup on Pose, and so they understand there that her perspective is valuable doing makeup on trans women and making them feel comfortable. And what are these things? And it makes a huge difference who's in all of these roles. So that I think that conversation is happening. Are we far enough along? Of course not. When we think about, with the Time's Up, the 50-50 by 2020, that like 50% of the population is female, are women, and like 50% of the people running studios and agencies are not. So we have work to do, but I think the conversation is shifting, and I think there's an appetite to have the conversation in our circles, at least, in a different way. That's what I feel.
Good answer.
I give long answers.
No, it's fine. Again, I don't have to talk.
I like to be thorough.
So we're gonna get some questions from the audience. They submitted them. I don't know if I should say their names. We won't. We will just stick to it.
Do you want your name said?
Do you want your name said? Okay. This question comes from Gil Jackson. Congratulations, Gil Jackson. Being a person of color on a wildly successful series, what is your desired impact on the world? Ooh.
Oh my gosh. Well, for me, it's always intersectional. So yes, I'm a person of color, but I'm also a woman, and I'm also a trans woman. I'm from a working class background. It's so deep, because it's so much of the impact I want to have is, I think it's happened with Orange in so many ways. I think I think our show maybe had a little bit to do with it, but in the 6 years since Orange is the New Black premiered, the conversation around criminal justice reform has shifted. Do you feel that? Yes. There's a real different conversation when you look at Democratic candidates running for office and talking about ending, cash bail, and talking about ending mandatory minimums in a more substantial way. The conversation has changed. We're able to have, when we look at immigration detention centers now, and Orange is the New Black goes there, and we're able to have that conversation around the ways in which immigration detention centers are very similar to private prisons, and I think the conversation has changed around criminal justice reform during the run of our show. Has our show impacted that? Maybe in part. I think the culture maybe was ready in general, but who, chicken or egg? Certainly in 2013, when our show premiered, there were no transgender actors with recurring roles on television. There were none. And last time GLAAD did a survey, there were 17 of us. That's progress. Yeah. Can there be more? Absolutely. Can there be more stories told? Absolutely. Before Orange is the New Black, there was a moment when we were shooting season 1, the Whack Pack episode. I've said this before, but there was a moment when I looked around when we were shooting, and it was hot, and some people didn't use deodorant. I'm like, girl. And it was hot and sweaty, but I looked around and I saw white women, I saw black women, I saw Latina women, I saw Asian women, I saw women in their 20s, I saw women in their 60s and 70s, I saw women who were size 2s, I saw women who were size 20s, I saw queer women, I saw trans women, I saw all these women I had never seen in one room on a television show before. I said to myself, this is incredible. This is amazing. I don't know if anybody's gonna go for this, but this is fabulous. And I really did. And I was like, because I'd never seen it before. So I was like, I don't know. This is cool, but I don't know. And luckily, folks have gone for it. So when I think about all the levels of diversity that our show represented, and I look around, and I look at Pose, and I look at This Is Us, and I look at different shows, and I'm like, okay. Something's shifting. Grace and Frankie, there's so many shows out there that we see pieces of women's stories from our show. I think we can say that. So it's just a beautiful thing. I mean, I can go on and on and on. I've been so blessed to meet people from all over the world who've come up to me and said, you know, lovely things about coming out as trans after they saw the show. I met a student. I've been doing a college tour for years, and I met a student, and he comes up to me and he's like, I'm trans, and I came out to my friends and I said, you know, I'm transgender, and they said, like Sophia on Orange Is the New Black, and he was like, yeah, but the other way, and and they were like, cool. And that was it.
Then they walked away.
No, they were like, okay, like what's for lunch? You know, it was like not a thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, you know, and I can go on with the stories like that I've heard. And so that is an incredible gift. You know, are trans people under attack in our culture in a way that we've maybe never been, with laws and the federal government, the ban of trans people from the military, for example, the attempt to, you know, repeal protections from us being able to access housing and homeless shelters. They want to take away our ability to access health care. They want to make it legal for insurance companies to discriminate against us. The guidelines that Obama set forth through the Justice Department and the Department of Education for how trans kids should be treated in schools. Jeff Sessions, that was one of the first things he repealed when he came into office. And he's gone now, but you know. God, that's so complicated on so many levels. So and when the murders of trans folks, like we just keep, it feels like almost every week another trans person is murdered. So this is the environment we're in. It's like the best of times and worst of times in some ways. There's so many things to celebrate, and I want to celebrate those things, but I think it's important that we have perspective on it. And so then, what is our job as artists in the face of that? And then what is our job as artists who also need to be engaged politically? Like how do we get, you know, folks in office who are going to do the will of the people and not the will of corporations? And because I think ultimately, the Cornel West Joe Rogan conversation I was talking about that I watched on the way here. Cornel West was talking about that white supremacy has always existed in the realm of predatory capitalism. So that our founding fathers who wanted freedom from England were slave owners, and they wanted to make money, and they got this free labor by dehumanizing an entire race of people, and the motive was money. And we see in 2019 that a lot of folks who are funding our politicians' campaigns, you know, if they're taking money from these corporations and from these rich people, they're doing the bidding of these rich people, and a lot of the times the rich folks may not necessarily be transphobic or sexist or racist at heart, but they're predatory capitalists, and they want to make as much money as possible, and they don't care who they exploit to do that. And if that cannot be the America that we live in, we have to, if we're interested in having a real democracy, we have to find ways to push back against that. We have to find ways to elect officials who would do the will of the people and not the will of special interests. God, I sound like Bernie Sanders.
No. There you go. Look at that. We have one more question. They didn't put their name. Anonymous.
I give long answers. I'm sorry. Two more questions. But.
No, just this last one. This is a lighter one. What will you miss most about working on the show and working with your co-stars?
I'm gonna miss them. I'm gonna miss my friends. I'm gonna miss my family. I'm gonna miss our crew. And you know, hair and makeup people. I mean, I learned this early on. I think I was doing a student film or something back in the day. You know, I did student films for free and off Broadway theater for free for years just to work. And I learned early on that the hair and makeup people will tell your business. And wardrobe people will tell your business. And if they don't like you, and if you have been rude to them, they will tell your business and talk shit about you in a way that it's not cute. So you must be nice to the hair and makeup people. You must be nice to the wardrobe people. And our hair and makeup team, they've been with us since the first season. One of our makeup artists, Karen, we lost her this year to cancer. She passed away, and she's an amazing woman. She did my makeup for the pilot for Dowd as well. And when you go in and on set, you sit in the makeup chair, and then you sit with the hair person and you talk about what's going on. And then Jen, our wardrobe person, I mean, we didn't wear a lot of, it was pretty. But for the flashbacks, we had but she's just one of the best people in the world. Like our crew, very few crew members that we had the whole 7 seasons, but just our crew and just these lovely people. Lisa Vinecore, one of our executive producers, because Gingy, the writers' room was here in Los Angeles, and we shot in New York, and Lisa was on set with us every day, taking care of us, making sure that we had what we needed. And she was Gingy's ear, but she was our ear as well. And so these are the wonderful things that you miss, and people that you love. Oh my God, and Dee. Mama D, she was one of our hairstylists. I mean, Angel. I mean, anyway, it's just our crew and our hair and makeup people, and then my fellow actors. Yeah, most of us started out as. It was so funny. I just did a panel with Dasha, Uzo, Danielle in New York around the premiere, and Uzo was going to give up acting. She was done. Uzo Aduba. The brilliant Uzo Aduba was gonna quit because she just was like, this isn't for me. Dasha was in nursing school, working out. She worked all night and then came to the Orange audition after doing a night shift, and she was kind of like, I don't know about this, but let me just try. And Danielle had just graduated from Juilliard and was doing a play and was like, I want to do this play. And then she was scared she had to be naked on the show and she didn't want to do that. And so we were all these kind of unlikely stars, there is no one like Uzo Aduba or Danielle Brooks or Dasha Polanco or Laverne Cox. You'd never seen anybody like us on magazine covers and billboards, and we were just I think of, and a lot of us were just sort of character actors doing, working I was happy to get my little Law and Orders or whatever in New York, and a lot of those folks are our cast and so we're just these, New York actors who kind of funky and weird, and and all of a sudden we're on this huge show, and so it's just we've come on this journey together, this very unlikely journey together, and so we're gonna be bonded forever.
Well, Laverne, thank you so much.
Thank you
for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Coming out this evening. Make sure you guys watch Orange is the New Black. Season 7 is out right now. I'm sure there'll be a 10-year reunion, a reboot. Orange
my God.
But thank you so much, Laverne. Thank you.
One last thing I'll say. For your consideration. Think of me fondly when you cast your vote.
Okay, come through, Phantom.
I don't know where that came from. I'm in the moment. I'm just in the moment to moment, kids. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Laverne.